A large population of Ugandans regularly fall victim to disasters, famine, earthquakes, landslides, floods, and other types of disasters have afflicted the people of Uganda in persistent incidents, which at times result in loss of life, property, displacement, and diseases that spread as after effects of disasters. Recent reports indicate that disaster loss and damage is on the rise in Uganda, with grave consequences for survival, dignity, and livelihood of citizens, particularly the poor.
Amazzi gano okusinga gava mu nnyanja ennyanja yajjula kati empewo bwe zijja zikuba amazzi okugajja mu nnyanja ne zigaleeta abantu gye bali okuluka tutadde amazzi ag'enkuba. Embeera eno etabangusa emirimu gy'abantu gifudde.
Hano munasiiti webukala sineno nenga khwafiirire balebe befe bakali ekhururwese yandu yange sendi umukhana omukhwalika sine beno tawe ne bebutiru.
Mitigating the challenge of disasters requires significant improved capacity to track, monitor, and disseminate information on phenomena and activities that trigger disaster events.
Apart from the other traditional system we're thinking of buying land and building houses, we may have to take another shortcut that can make you people leave this dangerous place as quickly as possible. And we are going to discuss that and communicate that to the popular and see the modalities of how it will work.
It also needs the support of institutional emergency preparedness and response capacity at local and national levels. It also implies an increased commitment to strategies to prevent disasters and mitigate their severity, which authorities in Uganda still lack.
Kasese is the most adversely affected. That does not take away the fact that others also are equally in need. But it is like we start with those who are most in need as we progressively cover the other areas.
This compounded by increasing vulnerabilities related to changing demographics, technological and socioeconomic conditions, unplanned urbanization, development within high-risk zones, environmental degradation, climate change, competition for scarce resources, and the impact of epidemics such as HIV/AIDS and COVID-19 points to a future where disasters could increasingly threaten Uganda's economy and its population. Aware that disasters disrupt the productive capacity of people, destroy the infrastructure, divert the planned use of meager resources, interrupt programs, and retard the pace of development, disasters should be an issue of priority. You cannot stop natural hazards from occurring, but you can stop them from turning into social and economic disasters. And this is the Limelight. To this segment, it is the Limelight, and my name is Tusima Apollo. Now, disasters have plagued mankind throughout history, and tales of floods and famine have been passed down for generations. In modern age, the occurrence of disasters has only become more frequent. Recently, the United Nations reported a steady increase of disasters across the globe. Since April 2020, flooding of lakes in Uganda has been ongoing. In August, government reported that rising water levels on Lake Albert and Lake Choga had displaced more than 8,700 people in Bulisa, Nakasongola, and Amolata districts, forcing population in Kalaki, Kakule sub-county in Kaberamaido district to seek refuge in nearby schools, with others sleeping in the open. Similar reports of flooding from Lake Albert in areas of Ndaiga sub-county in Kibale district has affected at least more than 6,000 people. The same can be said of the population living near banks of River Nyamamba in Kasese districts, not forgetting landslides of Bududa, Blambuli, Manafa, and Sononko districts, where tens of thousands of people have suffered for over a decade. While government has pursued efforts geared at bringing an end to intolerable and persistent loss of life, sufferings, and disruption of economic activities by disasters, lack of preparedness, and patchy and coordinated responses from government undercut these efforts. Experts have pointed out that the magnitude of disasters is more a result of inadequate planning than a result of natural, climatic, or geological conditions, and poor management of disasters also erodes the country of its hard-won development gains. The truth is, we are not so sure if a disaster will strike soon, but we need to prepare for the worst. This calls for efforts to enable all societies to become resilient to the effects of natural hazards and related technological and environmental disasters in order to reduce human, economic, and social losses. At this point, I bring in my guest, and she is Miss Rose Nakabugo, and she is the Acting Commissioner for Disaster Preparedness and Management in the Office of the Prime Minister. Madam Rose Nakabugo, you are live on Salt TV, and this is the Limelight. I want you, of course, to talk about disasters. I am sure, and I've been told, you have more than 20 years of experience in managing and handling issues related to disasters in your work. Please, can you tell us how this country of ours could be prepared, or what it has done so far to prepare for disasters?
Thank you very much, moderator, and good evening, viewers. Going directly to the question raised, of course, you have given some background to disasters in this country. Indeed, they are a big challenge, as we have all seen. We are experiencing floods, landslides. We have now the COVID-19 pandemic. Sometimes it is the earthquake, sometimes it is drought, pests and diseases, name it. We have a whole list of disasters that affect this country. And whenever they happen, the public would think we have not done much. But where we are, where I sit, we do our best to ensure we try to mitigate and prepare for disasters. But as you have seen, the problem is so big, and we don't have to continue being reactionary. That is the decision that was taken this side, and we need to be proactive. We have a national policy for disaster preparedness and management which guides us in preparedness, mitigation, prevention where possible, and then response where we cannot stop disasters from happening. Of late, most of the disasters are hydrometeorological in nature, meaning if it is not floods and landslides, it can be drought. And we may not be able to stop them from happening. The rains will continue raining, and when they rain, of course, in some parts of the country, especially in the mountainous regions, we would experience landslides. But there are steps that can be taken and we have taken to reduce the occurrence of these disasters, the effects mainly, because we can't stop them from happening. We can't hold the rains, but there are mitigation measures that we have undertaken. And in this, we work hand in hand with other sectors. Our main role as Office of the Prime Minister, because that's where I come from, is to coordinate the rest of the sectors in what we do in the direction of preparedness, disaster preparedness, mitigation, prevention, name it. Using the policy, we are able to know the interventions that have to be undertaken. For example, we do early warning, and we have a National Emergency Coordination and Operations Center based in Office of the Prime Minister. Early warning is meant to send out early warning information, up to the end user, and we work hand in hand with the UNMA, that is Uganda National Meteorological Authority. They give us information on what is about to happen in terms of the weather forecast, and we interpret it together with them. We communicate to the communities that are likely to be affected, and we ensure this information is sent out in time. Sometimes if the situation is going to be really bad, we know we have several local languages. We translate this information into local languages so that they can be understood by the target population. Early warning is supposed to be followed by early action, and all this is done from the National Emergency Coordination and Operations Center. And when the situation, when disasters strike, we are able to get this information timely and then use the information to respond accordingly. We have also created awareness in the communities. Many times we have gone out to interact and to inform the public or the communities that are mainly affected by disasters. We give them information on what that community is prone to. We did hazard vulnerability mapping, hazard risk and vulnerability mapping. We mapped this country and we know what is likely to happen where in the country. For example, we know the Elgon is prone to landslides and the low-lying areas are prone to floods. We know Kasese or Rwenzori region is prone to landslides and floods. And we have an atlas showing all these hazards that the country is prone to, the different parts of the country. And we go out and share this information with the communities to inform them what they are prone to, how they can coexist with the hazards that are in there without triggering them or erupting them into disasters. We also try to build the capacity of MDAs, that is ministries, departments and agencies, because as I mentioned, we don't work alone, but we coordinate with various sectors. We build the capacity of local governments, that is districts, sub-counties. We are supposed to continue down up to the village level because that's where things are happening. And according to our policy, there should be some degree of capacity at every level, because we know sometimes these are the first responders when things have happened. But do they know what to do? Can they do some basic life-saving? Do they have some basic life-saving skills? We try to equip them with this. But we have not been able to cover the entire country. As I said, we zoned or mapped the country, and we normally target the hotspots. We call them the hotspots, where we have had major challenges, like in the Rwenzori region, where we have Kasese, Bundibujo, Toroko. We've done the same in the Elgon, where we have Bugisu and Sebei, and several other parts of the country where we have identified to be hotspots. This National Emergency Coordination and Operations Center is going to trickle down to the districts so that it can have roots, and in that way we shall be able to even move faster, get this information more timely, and then respond more timely. But I've been talking about responding. We need to focus, and the focus currently is on preparedness, mitigation, prevention. And in this, we try to build resilience of communities. Even when disasters happen, these communities should not be affected. It is something we are still building. As you have seen and as you can see, the challenge is so big. Sometimes when these disasters happen, they can erode or destroy all the development that has been made over so many years. It can be destroyed in just days. So we appreciate the challenge at hand, how strong some of these disasters can be, You saw the floods in Kasese destroying infrastructure that has been in existence for years and worth billions of shillings. But how do we even locate infrastructure that we put into place? Is it in the right place, or that needs to be done? If it is a road, how can we make it stronger to be able to resist the conditions in that stretch or in that area?
Good.
If it is communities settling, how do we ensure they don't settle in areas that are prone, say, to floods? We know that communities should not settle very close to the river banks, for example. They must live at least 200 meters. But today you find many communities settling very close to river banks. And many of these have been swept away because of the heavy rains we've been receiving since April this year. Also, we have been giving information to communities not to settle on the steep slopes of the mountains. There are areas you would see when you go to the mountains. When you go to the Elgon, there are areas you would see that they are prone to landslides. And we inform communities to move away from those areas. And we started some interventions like resettlement of such communities. This is mainly happening in Bugisu sub-region. We are picking people from districts like Bududa, Manafa, Sironko, Apabulambuli, and others, Namisindwa, relocating them to safer zones to ensure they are not hit by landslides. But for those that we have not yet moved and we've seen they are in high-risk areas, we advise them to move at least and live with or stay temporarily with relatives and friends until the rains calm down or recede. Otherwise, if we don't take such measures, then we can lose many lives. I believe the interventions that we've been undertaking have, to some degree, helped to reduce loss of lives in these regions, especially in the Elgon. You have seen a lot of rain this year. If we had not possibly undertaken some of these measures, we would have lost many lives. But so far, one life was lost in Imbale, and Imbale was a new area affected by landslides. Our focus was elsewhere, then we were surprised by land also collapsing in Imbale.
Madam Rose.
But in other parts where we've been resettling people, at least...
Madam Rose, of course,
Yes.
you've talked about alerting communities in these high-risk areas, and you've done a tremendous job mapping out the country and identifying these high-risk areas. What about communities in those areas? What is their attitude to your responses, and how are they responding to your calls? Because I am sure you reported a crack in Mount Elgon about 2 years ago, but I'm sure there are some people still settled near that mountain.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, we have been giving information. We've not been using forceful resettlement or relocation of these people. We give them information and they make informed decisions to move or not to move. But sometimes there are challenges. Some of them don't want to move away from where they have been staying, their ancestral homes, where they have been for many years. They find it hard to move away, not until something happens and they see land collapsing on their colleagues, on their relatives, that they can in the end accept to move. Otherwise, it has not been so easy. Some of them have been refusing because of the attachments they have. Sometimes it has to do with culture. They think if they move, they will lose possibly their culture. And that's why the resettlement that is going on in Bugisu sub-region, it had to take place within Bugisu. We were conditioned to find land within Bugisu. We know that Bugisu is already overpopulated, but we had to find land in that very district because people are attached to where they come from. They are attached to their norms and values and culture, and sometimes it is a challenge convincing them to move.
Usually, from reports...
Otherwise, as I was mentioning,
From experts are saying, or experts say, that the best remedy is preparation. And I don't know, let's talk about funding. How are you prepared? Do we have a separate fund, an emergency fund, to handle a disaster in case it happens?
Under the Public Finance Management Act, we have a contingency fund which is meant to support interventions in case of an emergency. And that is what is normally tapped into to support emergency-related interventions. The fund is there.
Madam Rose, we see when a disaster strikes, then we see fundraising drives and people, I don't want to use the word begging. What is that fund doing?
Unfortunately, the fund is under the management of Ministry of Finance, and when an emergency happens, there are procedures. There is a process through which such funds are accessed. They are not readily available to us to just pick from and go and support or respond to a situation. That's why there is sometimes a delay. But discussions are going on with Ministry of Finance to see how fast we can access such resources to respond and to save lives and livelihoods.
Let's talk about another disaster that usually strikes here, the disaster of famine, and most probably happening as a result of drought. Madam Rose, do we have food reserves? At one point, we were talking about food silos. I don't know if we have any.
There are discussions going on around that, but you know, it has implications, and such food reserves need to be managed very well. But according to the discussions that took place, those food reserves are supposed to be managed under Ministry of Trade and Industry. And I think I remember seeing communication from the minister. They are looking at establishing those silos. I believe at some point they will start implementing this, but it is a matter that has been raised, it has been discussed, and they are looking at the best way of managing them, because if we don't, possibly some food, in case there is no need of giving food relief to any community, then such food may go bad if it is not consumed in time. If it is not consumed, how is it released into the market? All those are issues that are being discussed. But yeah, Ministry of Trade and Industry took it up.
Okay, let's talk about interagency coordination, because I think it's one other important issue in coordinating and managing disasters. How is it? How do agencies coordinate? Do you have a system? Do you have a mechanism to have these agencies coordinating for a timely response to disasters?
preparedness and management. And yes, we do have a platform where we do the coordination. It brings together all key players at the national level, and through this platform we coordinate with all partners. It trickles down, this structure trickles down to local governments. We have district disaster management committees that bring together all key players in disaster preparedness and management. They are chaired by the chief administrative officers, and on board we have the heads of departments and partners working within the respective districts. It goes down to sub-counties where we have sub-county disaster management committees. So coordination takes place, and it is happening with all partners, and we receive support in that through that coordination.
I think from what you've said, Madam Rose, we are prepared, and if any disaster happens, probably there will be timely response. Please assure Ugandans that that will happen probably.
As I mentioned earlier, the problem is big, and sometimes you may not imagine that the magnitude, its magnitude. When you look at the floods in Kasese, even when you have put into place preparedness interventions, even when you have done early warning, some of them come when they are heavy. When you look at the floods we have suffered this year alone, where because of rising levels of water in all our lakes, talk about Victoria, Lake Albert, Lake Choga, the problem is very big. And it's normal for countries to be overwhelmed. Sometimes we can be overwhelmed. So this year, yes, the situation has been really bad. I cannot say we have done very well, much as we do our best, but you know, the situation is overwhelming. We have seen similar things happening even in developed countries. As we look at our country, let's